Welcome to the Centaur Podcast. I'm Cameron Adibi, and I interview others about the unique and profound relationships between horses and humans. In each episode, we delve into the dynamics of these connections, examining how they are formed, nurtured, and celebrated. From the emotional bonds that develop through companionship and care to the practical aspects of training and communication, we aim to highlight the rich tapestry of these experiences that define the horse-human relationship. Join us as we share stories, insights, expert interviews that illuminate the deep understanding and mutual respect between these magnificent creatures and the people who love them. Whether you're a horse owner, an enthusiast, or simply curious about this fascinating connection, you are invited to listen in and discover the many ways horses enrich our lives. Thanks to my friend Kim, I got to interview Connie Funk, who is a horsewoman and author with an extraordinary background. She has had a lifelong love of animals and nature and their connection with the human family. Her interests have created pursuits in landscape design, antique sales, appraisals, multimedia artwork, and the committed study of the horse. She has worked with local schoolchildren to learn about compassionate and animal care and organic gardening and composting. She has been an ardent volunteer to support organizations that benefit children and families, animals, and the environment, and the arts. A lifelong interest in writing has resulted in publications in magazines and newspapers, and multiple books, including Beauty from Brokeness. Connie lives in rural Washington State with her husband and extended animal family. We picked up our conversation talking about this beautiful photo of Shasta, this incredible horse that entered Connie's life and became her teacher. Shasta died about 4 years ago, and Connie was just so open about talking about this relationship and how it transformed her life. Hope you enjoy this interview.
I can tell you're an artist, but so here we are. We're talking, getting to talk. Thanks to Kim McElroy.
Yes.
And I know you're doing your homework. I'm trying to keep up with all because you have so much rich story to tell you. And it's just as I'm reading your book, I haven't quite finished yet. Actually, I have 2 more books to finish. You gave me 3, but the beauty from brokenness. Kim did the introduction, and she called you an artist of life. And then, great, you got all the best here. You got Sandra Wallen, who I'm gonna get to interview thanks to Kim. She says you have the gift of story, and then Alan Schoen, you have this gift of the essential truths of life. I mean, these are heavy hitting kind of tags they're giving you. And then Liz says, you have this gift of being called by a force much larger than we can imagine. I mean, these are like everybody's witnessing and seeing your gifts and your work. But I got to ask you. I mean, this is like because this is honestly it's something that I don't know. I get struggle with a little bit. But do you ever battle with loneliness? Being on this kind of really narrow. I'm not narrow path, but a path that is very different.
Well, let me say, I have another sound healing contribution coming from this room that I didn't anticipate. It's a screen comparable to a computer screen that was from my son and his wife. And those are my grandsons. You can send videos and photos to it.
Yeah.
And it's going off in the background. And I have it turned up to the max so that when I'm around, I can hear the joyous sounds of my grandsons. So there's another sound healing contribution. Neither solicited particular.
There you are. You're never alone. You're never alone. That's the answer.
Never.
Yeah. But do you feel that? Do you feel that you never know?
What I would say to that is that I wrote a story in one of my books, and I don't recall, it might be in Beauty from Brokenness, but it might be in the second book, which is called Holy as Thou. I had a family, I grew up in my biological family, artists, and we were one thing we weren't allowed to be, and that was bored. And I wrote a little story about that. And I know I've got to be mindful of time because there's so much in storytelling where I could, segue. But boredom was not something that was nurtured in my family. Creativity, inspiration, and of course, people who know me well know I'm a Jesus girl, and that took me outside. And so for me, and the horse crazy gene, I don't, I think I think it's innate. And I think that your heart either beats faster at the sight of a horse, either a Kim McAlvery image or a horse in the field somewhere, or in my case, in my own backyard. But it's hardwired into you. And to start with that, I actually wrote something down in a previous conversation I had with you. I hear my grandsons in the background. My grandson Charlie, who's almost 3, is probably the most slapstick kid I've ever met.
Oh, I love it.
And he's laughing hysterically over some of the antics, and loving to laugh is such a gift,
Right.
and
Yeah.
sharing laughter and joy is such a gift. And I told you in an earlier conversation that if I have any wisdom at all, or contentment, or peace, it's because I have deep faith in God, and I hang out with children and horses, and they tell the truth.
They're truth tellers. They're totally every time.
And the truth will set you free.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not you want to hear it or see it or feel it or absorb it at the moment, it will set you free. So I wanted to read something based on what I endeavor to live my life, and someone that touched me deeply as a child. I was really into, I told you earlier that I don't take time for fiction, not that there isn't great fiction out there, but I just love true stories. I love true stories, and I love overcoming, and I love, healing, and finding the beauty from the brokenness, etc. So as a small child, I was constantly checking out biographies and autobiographies of people. And one that I really resonated with early in life was George Washington Carver. Mm. And most of his books, whether they be biographies or autobiographies, they're entitled From Slave to Scientist, because he was born a slave in America and became a renowned scientist. But I would edit that to say from slave to spiritual scientist, because George Washington Carver, because of his faith and because he believed in God speaking to us through his creation, there was never a separation between science and spirituality, where the modern culture wants to create this divisiveness, and you're either science or faith, one or the other, but not both.
Can't be both, exactly.
And sadly, that's so not true in every culture around the world. And really, in my world, in my humble opinion, science is humankind's attempt, and a quite brilliant attempt in many cases, at explaining God's creation.
The mystery.
And so,
mysteries,
but the mystery cannot be fully
exactly.
contained, so this is a quote from George Washington Carver, and I only wrote it down so I don't goof it up, because he's such a beautiful man, and started as such a beautiful, beautiful child. I love to think of nature as an unlimited broadcast system through which God speaks to us every hour if we will only tune in. I ask the great creator silently, daily, and often many times a day to permit me to speak to him through the 3 great kingdoms of the world that he created, the animal, mineral, and vegetable kingdoms, to understand their relations to each other and our relations to them, and the great God who made all of us. I ask him daily and often momently to give me wisdom and understanding and bodily strength to do his will. Hence, I am asking and receiving all the time. And I so love that, because every one of us has access to that. I have incredibly blessed access because I'm surrounded by nature. We live on what's called Pleasant Ridge, right by the North Fork of the Skagit River, where it comes out into the bay below us and the islands and the mountains. It's spectacularly beautiful. And because of the horses, we have pastures and we have wooded areas. It's beautiful. Having said that, Kim and Sandra's recent, and I know you did your amazing conversation with Kim, the Council of Horses is written from the horse's perspective. So it's about not just about horses or seeing the beauty of horses through Kim's art and their text, but a greater sense of connecting with the horses, not the horses, not about the horses, but with the horses. And for me, Shasta was the most amazing broadcasting station I have ever encountered on so many levels. Now, I will say that the Holy Spirit that fills me and animates every cell in my body, I have had incredibly blessed encounters with humans and many other animals in my life. I remember, and this is a little bit maybe too much information, but I remember
never too much.
My only son, Evan, at my breast, and I was staring at him so intently with such reverent love and maternal hardwiring that he just popped off for a second, like, wow, you really think I'm special. Just beamed.
Yeah.
His mouth was full of milk and he just beamed at me. And then he went right back to business. And I will never, ever not be able to access that moment in time. And so I've had many other very, very special encounters. And yet Shasta was my broadcasting station that took me to places that I couldn't have even conceived, that were so far beyond any and I have an amazily fertile imagination that was really encouraged by my family.
3 books as well. It's which are nonfiction.
Yeah, nonfiction, and
but it still takes a lot to write a book, even a book like that. Anyway, but yeah, this is. I
could just get into her neck and breathe in the equine scent that if we could bottle, we'd both retire in wealth, almost nothing like it.
Yeah.
And to hear her, and I've talked to you about some of her very amazing vocalizations. So she just took me to places that I wouldn't ever have experienced. Yep. And for 21 years, she became, and I mentioned to you, one of my dearest friends was an Irish Catholic priest named Father William Tracy, who lived to be 104 and passed just a few years ago. And he was close friends with John O'Donoghue.
Oh, yeah. Great author. Love his stuff.
Yes. And he actually gave the funeral celebration, memorial celebration for John O'Donoghue, went to Ireland to do that.
Yeah, that's no small matter there.
Yeah. Yes. And he gifted me with the book Anam Cara, one of, I think, John O'Donoghue's masterpieces, yep. Which translates, and of course, Father Tracy spoke fluent Gaelic. And my other, so Signora Mare is Gaela, which means calm healer in Gaelic. And Anam Cara translates to soul friend. And that is what Shasta brought to me. She was and is and will remain my soul friend. She touched me on so many levels and took me to heights and depths. Trust me.
Yep.
We had near-death experiences in the beginning. Yep. And I said in my book, she scared me to death, scared me back to my middle-aged, middle-class little box of comfort. And she sort of blew me out of the water in terms of that. And yet when we didn't die and didn't have a scratch on us and should have or could have, by the grace of God, when I dismounted and we walked home very, very shakily, we realized we were both different. She had been in 6 homes in 6 years.
Wow.
And she was not to be dominated. and she was and was supremely intelligent. So a horse that won't be dominated in domesticity, oftentimes sadly, not so much as it used to be, but sadly can still be called, or any kind of human nonsense label.
Right.
What it is intelligence beyond anything that most people can fathom. And for me, it was especially confusing because my husband and son, who had found her and surprised me with her for my birthday, she thought they were swell. My son was riding her bareback, and I hired the cowboy that does all of our fences, and she flirted shamelessly with him, and he had his coat over the rail, and she took his cigarettes out and literally batted her eyelashes at him. And I'm thinking, but me, not so much. She said, no, and no thanks. And she said to me, basically, you're a really nice lady on the outside, and I think you're sincere, but there's some stuff going on there it's up to you, but we need to explore that if we're going to have this incredible relationship. So
I want to hear. I'm going to cut because we have to now backtrack just a little bit. First of all, thank you so much for sharing that image and that experience. With you breastfeeding your son. I mean, that's a beautiful. So you just shared something that I'll never experience. That is such what a privilege you got to have that. You have that in your mind. So those
such a blessing.
So they're obviously you have a gift of story. So you are an author, an artist, a mosaic. I think you do. I saw some of the photos. Some mosaic art is beautiful, by the way. You have such a wide interest in landscape design and architecture. You're a farmer, you're a mother, you're a grandmother, you're a horsewoman. Did I miss it? What else am I missing here? You got a lot goes on, and a woman of faith. But this is what we call ourselves. It's like, again, this is back when how do we stuff the horse into a label? They have to be this, right? So Shasta was this incredible equine partner in your life. Can you just start with how, besides how you got besides your son and husband? How old? It was 1 years, and how old was she when she arrived? What's the story when she first entered your life? Where did she come from? Was she like what was her background? What were the 6 owners? Who was she when she first arrived?
I don't know her sources of trauma, but any sentient being who has relocated 6 times in 6 years, we know there's a trauma story embedded in that. What I do know is that God's hand is at work all the time. And in France, with my brother and my parents, the first time I had ever been away from my husband and son for any length of time. I was a stay-at-home mama, and my son was in middle school, and our first horse, Chad, had passed, and I was grief-stricken. I was not prepared to get another horse. I just sort of at that moment sort of closed the book. And Chad gave me a very false sense of confidence because he was a been there, done that quarter horse gelding who aimed to please. And I had no idea. I knew he was a spectacular animal and I loved him deeply. Yet I did not know how much he filled in for us, but particularly for me. I mean, this horse would all but, I thought I was I'd be loping around our property like I was, like I was sort of a cowgirl. And really, he was just keeping me from falling off. And I'd bring the groom box out and he'd walk up to the fence line and raise a hoof. Like, howdy, ma'am, how can I help? He was just so generous. Nice. And then I was in France, and I mentioned to you that I had a Romeo in my life. I was riding a little Pasifino stallion Romeo with our guest at the B&B, and they had 2 sons. One couldn't get away from the family soon enough to go to Paris and seek his fame and fortune, and the other younger son was just a nature boy. and he helped his parents at the B&B by giving trail rides. I mean, through the Luberon, through olive groves and vineyards. It was spectacular. Nobody else signed up. So it was just me and this young, dark-haired, handsome French gentleman. And fortunately, his name is Damien. Beautiful young man. Fortunately, his English was far better than what my brother called my fractured French, because my brother is fluent in languages, and he would shake his head at my fractured French. But anyway, we went on a fabulous ride. Simultaneous to that, across the ocean, my husband and son were looking for a Palomino colored horse, because the horse of my dreams as a small child, I grew up in North Seattle, Edmonds, Richmond Beach area, and I wanted a pony for Christmas every year, and we didn't have a big enough backyard. And so think of me, I'm dating myself here, but think of me as a 50s kid in the US. I was madly in love with Roy Rogers and Dale Evans and Trigger, who wouldn't be? And then Mr. Ed came on the scene. Do you have any idea?
Of course.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
No, I watched those reruns as a child.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I watched the original.
Oh,
I
boy.
was
Okay.
I was born in 1955, and it debuted in 1961. So this preposterous story of a horse that gets left behind when these people buy the house. The horse is still out there, and you never see any poop or that he eats or anything. But interesting, they throw the paradigm a little bit upside down, because usually, not always, because here you are, a beautiful man loving horses, but you would think that the lady would be sort of horse crazy. She wanted to get rid of this horse out there. But the man, Wilbur, was fascinated, and he really loved this horse, and he made this connection. Well, at the point that Wilbur, after all the other antics, speaks audibly in English to Mr. Ed, speaks audibly to Wilbur, Wilbur looks at him just mystified and says, how is this possible? and the horse, as Mr. Ed, and interestingly enough, I heard they used peanut butter up against his palate to have his lips move. Whether that's true, I don't know. That's a little horse training mythology.
Yep.
And I hope he liked peanut butter, if that was the case.
Right.
Having said that, the line that he says in English audibly on this silly sitcom is, don't try, in his Mr. Ed voice, don't try to figure it out, Wilbur. This thing is bigger than both of us. Now that's pretty heavy duty for 1961.
For a TV sitcom, right? Oh, yeah. You would never hear that. You would never hear that.
And that's what life is all about. And when you have these adventures with horses, back to what Liz Minton-Ryan so kindly said about me, is that I'm tuned into this force that is bigger than all of us. So segueing, my husband and son were looking for a Palomino colored horse of my dreams. They didn't take a vet. They weren't, I mean, we'd had Chad, this wonderful horse, but they didn't have any knowledge. He was just looking at the ads and trying to find a golden horse for me. So he finds Shasta. Guess who he purchases him from?
Who's that?
A handsome, dark-haired man named Damien.
Oh, man. And you're right. Okay.
At the identical time. I don't even know anybody named Damien. Never met anybody. It's
not a very common name in this part of the world.
It isn't. So it's just fascinating to me, these synchronicities, that if we're paying attention, if we have our eyes, ears, hearts open, it's happening all around us all the time. And there are miracles, miracles abound, small and large, and synchronicities, I always call it God winks. It's it's just within and without, and it's everywhere. So that's how Shasta came into my life. And the night that I came home from France was the morning my son and my husband left for what's called mountain camp. It's a week-long thing that middle schoolers go on, and my husband was the volunteer dad to stay in the boys' camp. And so they fed the dogs in the morning before we left, and then I was to get home that night. And so when I got home, we had 3 dogs at the time, and they were literally all but knocking me down, barking and excited. And I just thought they were super excited to see me. And I was exhausted and jet lagged, and I had sent my brother lives in Los Angeles and taken my parents home. And I see this, happy birthday, we love you, we got you a horse. And I thought maybe it was a little Breyer model or something for the tackling. And I wasn't quite, and so her name is Shasta. And I looked down at the dogs and they were like, we're trying to tell you there's a horse out there. So I took a flashlight and I took an apple off of the bowl from our orchard. And I walked out into the moonlight where I figured she'd be by the stable. And we always have open doors 24/7.
Nice.
The horses always have free choice of where they go.
Yep.
And because if they're going to be in domesticity, I want them to have as natural an environment as possible.
I appreciate that.
So I walked out and I got my little flashlight and I see her eyes. So I beam it up and I see her looking at me and she has, I'm trying not to put the flashlight in her eyes, but when I went up in my vision, I could see a lightning shaped scar on her right down her face. And I took just a visceral hit to my solar plexus. And then she took the apple and receded into the darkness. And it was the very end of September, maybe October 1st, end of September. So it was a full moon, and the full moon was behind, just glowing. And it was the most eerie. And so I went in thinking, what just happened here? Wow. What just happened here? I woke up in the morning after an extremely vivid dream. I have dreams that are 3-dimensional, full color, surround sound. I have very, very vivid dream life. And I dreamt that I was riding with this young French dark-haired Damien, but I was riding a Palomino colored horse, not the little dark bay Pasifino. And so my night dreams and my reality had sort of commingled. And then I got up and thought, oh my gosh, there she is. And she was the horse of my dreams. So I just wanted to rush her personal space and throw my arms around her. And she just, she had real reservations because I didn't know. And my first horse, Chad, was the embodiment of my childhood dreams.
Yeah, and he's like, bring it on. He had no reservations. But yeah, this is what Marianne talks about. Marianne Simons. I don't know if you've crossed.
I love her, and thanks to you, I got her newest book.
Oh God, so it's this changing this perception from horse-centric, from human-centric to horse. That's the first thing with most kids I work with, and most people I work with. They want to just tackle the horse, like, oh my God,
absolutely.
It's like, I don't think so.
Here is me with Chad. Here's an example of my lunacy with Chad and my complete lack of awareness. The little gal that we got Chad from, she became Evan's big sister, and we always say she came with the horse. And we've had a tremendous relationship with her and her family since. But she was this young, beautiful young woman, and she could do all the horse equine vaulting stuff. So she literally could run up behind Chad when he was grazing, vault from his rump, his back, and take off with a little bit of mane. Jeez. And he was just more than happy to comply. Wow. And so here's me. Yeah. I used to try. I didn't try the rump version. I would try the side version, but I wasn't coordinated enough or didn't have enough springs in my feet. But I would try to get up that way and ride him bareback and think, yeehaw, here we go. And he would allow me to come up to him without permission and consent or my fist to say, hello, Chad, you're amazing. Yeah. And he would let me kind of thump up against him. And then he would look at me like, well, no success, better luck next time. And then he would go back to grazing. Shasta, she came to be my accountability partner. She came to help me find congruence in my life. She came to teach me about boundaries. She came to teach me that no is a complete sentence. It's not no with a bunch of qualifications and this is why and rationalizations and justifications. Just no or no, thank you. and sometimes hell no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, because she was very well versed in that.
Mm.
Having said all those things, she changed my life. She turned it upside down, literally and metaphorically, and inside out, and and became. She just became such a, like I said, in so many areas that it crossed over into every other relationship of my life.
I love that.
So, as far as my faith, Shasta, I I believe that horses look back at us through the eyes of God, the eyes of their creator. And when we see that, then we can see that reflected in ourselves because they are mirrors for us.
Mhm.
And to help us, initially I felt very rejected and confused and I didn't like some of the stuff she was tapping into. I used the
She
word,
hurt your ego, and that was my question.
oh
Did you think
goodness.
do you think that's maybe one of the biggest gifts she had to she let you let go of your ego mind,
Oh gosh.
what you had to think, what
Oh
you thought
gosh.
you. This is what I find like is so interesting about horses because I'm kind of new at this, relatively, now 11 years more or less. But I'm watching some other people, and I mean, I have to just keep my mouth shut. But it's like, anyway, it's like horses are about. It seems like they're a big lesson for a lot of what we're when we're horses. What to learn, to unlearn what we learned in so many
Oh,
ways.
absolutely.
And so, I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
and
Like I said,
go
go
ahead, yes.
ahead.
Well, and so back, I mean, I have to tie into Kim again because there's a reason we're talking.
Right.
But well, actually, before I go to that, there is in the early part of your book, you mentioned that the horse is not only a mirror but a microphone. Which, of course, I'm into.
Mm,
We're talking a microphone. I'm into sound. I'm working with sound healing.
mm.
How did she microphone you? How did she put the microphone up to you? What did she do? Shasta, I'm talking about.
Once again, I endeavor to live my life. I think horses are sort of experts, and they really do a good job of this in the text of Council of Horses by asking questions. And I know I'm that way with children all the time, and George Washington Carver and that influence on me, sort of the Socratic method of asking questions and and taking ownership, not just being told. But so horses are just uniquely. Um, the more time you spend with them, seeing them as the marvelous, amazing creatures that they are. And I use the word unique, and that's such a cliche word, it's so overused. And yet, horses in my world, because many other companion animals have amazing qualities, whether they be cats, dogs, birds, mammals, all kinds. But horses seem uniquely qualified to access what most needs to come up, and emotions that are buried or unresolved or unaware. And so Shasta had just sort of, it was like, and you're very tender and very, she was sometimes she was sometimes very bold and direct in terms of taking the microphone. She'd take her horse face sometimes right up against mine. In the beginning, I remember telling people that she would roll her eyes at me, and they'd say, "Pardon?" And I'd say, "Well, she just gets so irritated sometimes that I just don't get it. I'm such a dunce that she has to just roll her eyes at me and sometimes turn around and walk away because I just haven't gotten the message." Um, and then they would come out and see her roll her eyes at me and say, "Oh my gosh, she just did that. She was so deliberate." And again, the more you see the intelligence or beauty in some other creature, the more they have to offer. Have you read J. Allen Boone's kinship with all life?
No, you're so much more well read than I am,
Oh,
and your book.
I'll send you a message.
Well, your book has a
I'll send you a
lot.
message. I think it's in the resource
I think
list.
it is too. Your research, the
I
book,
think it is.
your book, it really
It's,
is. Beauty from Brokenness is really well done, and so much. It's another kind of really nice resource for anyone. But
well, you want to know something so funny? You want to know a laugh out loud I had this morning? I thought in preparation I should sort of see, since my books are out of print, the publisher is out of business. I mean, my website is obsolete because my web designer, who's fabulous, Davina Andre, who's Kim McElroy's agent and graphic designer, along with Kim.
Mhm.
She told me that my website was what was the word? Extinct. And I was like, that doesn't sound good. That doesn't sound good. She said I'd have to completely, reinvent it all, et cetera. And I said, I'm on a hiatus, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I'm a grandma now, and et cetera. So I'm off the radar completely. And that's fine. I am in my way doing lots of wonderful things. But it was funny because this morning I went online to see, and yes, you can. I couldn't even find Holy as Thou. It's like it didn't even exist. I have no idea. I couldn't find it on
Thank you for the copy.
Amazon.
That's my next read. Yeah.
Good. I couldn't find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I did find the third book, which was just supposed to be a chapter in the third book that's sitting on my computer and in a box somewhere.
Yeah.
That was available. Too Much Blessing for Stressing was available. It's available, I believe. It's a different publisher, but I think it's on demand. But there was I even typed in thrift books where you can buy used books, because
like that.
you can buy used copies on Amazon of the original books.
Yeah.
But it was so funny because Beauty from Brokenness was on thrift books. So I thought, oh, well, there's some used copies. But what it said was zero interest in this book.
Oh, no.
Zero.
Oh,
like
boy.
a zero. And it literally made me laugh out loud because again, out there in the culture, there's all kinds of protocols and parameters and things like that. And the truth is, it helped me to laugh out loud. And I think what you said earlier about
ego deflation, it was more ego deflation.
Oh, totally ego deflation. But it literally helped me to laugh out loud because I don't even know the year it was published.
The loneliness part.
That was going on with my life. But I think all of us here have, we've been given purpose. We've been given gifts to develop and purpose. And you certainly in your life have done all kinds of fascinating things and are finding your calling now with sound healing and horses and children. And it's beautiful and incredible. But I think that we have a specific assignment and assignments over time.
Yeah.
And then I think we have a general task assignment. And that is what Shasta has helped me with as much as any sentient being could. And that is the balance between self-love, self-acceptance, being your own best friend, and utter humility. Mm-hmm. And like I said, if I have any wisdom, it's because I hang out with horses and children, and they will keep you humble, for sure.
Truth tellers every single time. And if
they will keep you humble, and they will help you to love and enjoy who you are. And that really is what Shasta really, over those 21 years, helped me, because, we are commanded to love thy neighbor. Mm-hmm. That includes horses and everybody else, as ourselves. But if we can't love and know ourselves, then we really can't love other.
It's
we
powerful.
Really can't love.
I mean, that's a fundamental.
It's really that fundamental and simple. Doesn't mean it's easy.
No.
But it's that simple. And so in the end, striving for or endeavoring or intending to have that balance between self-acceptance and then supporting children, as in my life and in your life with horses and these things over years, is to help them identify themselves as a child of God or beautiful and valuable and special. And again, that word unique. And at the same time, not push towards entitlement or narcissism or ego or any of this other stuff that we all have to learn and then unlearn.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to live fully and fully embody both sides of our brain and have integration of information and knowledge and creativity and inspiration, those things. And that is, I think, our ultimate reason for being here, is to find and achieve that balance. And I can say that literally Shasta checked every box. So when your original question, how did she use the microphone, is I could hear her asking me those questions, clear as a bell.
And again, I think that's another thing that we all have access to. We just have lost that skill. Some multiple things I have to just share real quickly. That, first of all, I love how you refer to her in the present time. And so she's still here. That's, again, back to the Council of Horses, this idea. This is, I think, one of the things that is so powerful about horses, not only their intuitive nature and their ability to be truth tellers and really reflect what we're feeling and sensing, but also they have access to the spirit world. They're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And again, they, Hunter, Romeo, and the two minis, Pixie and Fluff, they always surprise me with this kind of, but the thing I have to ask then is, you mentioned it. So back to, I have to tie into Kim. I have to tie Kim in. You have in the book. You said you have a copy, or you have print of Kim's Silent Night. And there's a really nice story in your book about that.
Yes.
But you talk about God's exclamation points. But you also, early in the book, you talk about the equine punctuation, where they all use exclamation points. Where it sounds like Shasta had that gift, but she actually had She had really, which I find very unique. Excuse me for using that word, but she would have vocalizations. What were some of her vocalizations?
Like all horses, she whinnied once in a while. She'd whinny at me in a way like, get with it, from a distance or whatever, or sometimes in recognition. As over the years, as our relationship developed, I sometimes, this is going to get to me. She sometimes gave me that maternal wicker, that little, it's not a nicker, it's a wicker. It's a little quiet, sort of reserved for your Anamkara, for your Ibn. And sometimes it was in approval. And again, it was all I could do, not to just leap on her and throw my arms around her. But I had to, in her language, acknowledge that she was saying, I love you, and I love you back. She, as soon as I discovered, I thank God I found natural horsemanship, and I learned some basic, very important things. Like, one of the most important mantras was work on yourself, play with your horse. and because you have work to do, and that means you need to learn how to relax. You learn how to ground and be calm and be centered. And then you need to learn horse body language. And there's a lot you need to learn, and then go play with your horse. So as soon as I started learning Liberty, Carolyn Resnick, and various things. And so I stopped everything. I stopped trying to ride a horse who said, you don't have a connection with me at that level yet. And she really didn't give me permission and consent. So I took everything off, even though, and we went out and I created a wonderful playground, and we played. And Shasta helped me rediscover. I think I sent you that picture where I'm on my son's swing set.
Yeah.
And I'm on the ropes. It's a horse tire swing. And we called him Blaze, and I painted Blaze on his tail and a blaze on his forehead. And it swings back and forth. And as I would do that, she would go into that small space and synchronize with me. As I would swing, she would go forward and backward at liberty.
So
And
cool.
the
So
thrill, the thrill of going from where we were, near death experiences in the woods, when I was completely unable to connect with her in the ways that she needed and deserved, to that. So she helped me reconnect with my 7-year-old Connie. I used to wear a pixie haircut. It was a little short, it looked like you put the bowl on the head type of thing. But I would just shake it like it was just the most fabulous mane in the world. And I would run the entire recess at school with all the little girls following me, because I was the lead mare, that's for sure. And and I was so into horses in that way. So that's helped me rediscover that and just put my left brain down, and just my overthinking, my analyzing, and then what am I doing wrong? And resentments, like Shasta's great with my son and my husband and the cowboy, but what about me over here? I'm the horse crazy, And so she not only helped me do that, but she changed the way I saw her, and therefore all other horses and all of life. I saw her in a completely new, but she was so matter of fact. And she taught me, and well, I have to be so careful and mindful of this. I said this to her in an earlier conversation. Shasta did not like me speaking in past tense because she always wanted me to be continually learning. I didn't learn anything. I'm continuing to learn about boundaries and all those things that she was teaching me. But I discovered something she passed on a couple of years ago, and there was nothing I could do to prepare myself for that. And what I discovered was that the petulant 7-year-old in me came out, because I wanted her back, and I wanted her now in the flesh. And that has been very challenging for me, because she helped me rediscover the joyful, happy little horse crazy girl. And that became our relationship. And it's been very hard for me in my adult body and my adult mind to accept that she is no longer with me in the form that I love so dearly. And so, through the Council of Horses and my faith and everything, is that I have to remember, like I said earlier, I can access, no matter how petulant I'm feeling in the moment, and my little fists, I want her back and I want her now. I can lay that down and choose the peace and gratitude. That's the other thing about our life task in finding the gratitude between who we are and our humility. It's bridged and linked with absolute gratitude. And that's back to, a quote by another, I don't know if I wrote it down this morning, because it's on it. I have an antique child's in the other room, and I have this written in chalk, and it says, "Earth is crammed with heaven. Every common bush is ablaze with the love of God." And that's attributed to Elizabeth Barrett Browning. I love it. That's Earth awesome. Is crammed with heaven. It's just crammed.
Yeah.
And when you are in the presence of the horses, you're just crammed with opportunity 100%. To be filled with being alive.
We don't have to wait. And heaven is right here. We don't have to wait any longer.
It's right here. It's right here. And for me, and you said earlier, the veil is very thin. And these horses, I remember one time laying on the ground, watching them, observing them graze, and feeling so blessed, and watching them be Tai Chi masters, filling and letting, and releasing as they move forward. And what's designed into them is forward movement. Mm-hmm. And so we get to take all those opportunities to learn, and for me, she helped me embody and ground back into my 7-year-old body that was so much filled with so much joy, and sort of out of my analytical left brain where I, culturally got taken, and like you say, unlearning all those things. And then to be able to play, I feel you and I have talked somewhat about this as well, working and playing with children. I always emphasize when people ask me that I work and play with children, because play is what was designed for their development. And sadly, in the culture of technology, as great as it is for you and halfway across, the country, well, at the other end of the country,
Right.
that we have the technology to have this conversation and be able to see each other and experience it. The technology of children's toys from infancy on that are digitized and they're designed to cross crawl before they walk, and they are designed to, their brains are designed not to have some of those technological interferences.
Yep.
It doesn't just delay some things, it actually damages some pathways.
It's a big question. Are we evolving or de-evolving? But I have to go back to this. This is a great image.
Absolutely.
It's a great image you brought up about this 7-year-old girl. It made me, when you were talking, it made me think about, I don't know if I'm getting it exactly right, but Dr. Carl Jung, at I think age 55, the great psychologist, at age 55,
Yes.
decided he wanted to build a rock house because that was his childhood dream. How we can
you
allow
go.
this playfulness, and that's I'm originally from Pittsburgh, so Mr. Rogers, that was one of the biggest principles. But that's exactly how horses that's how they communicate, is through play. They're playing all the time. They're doing it every day. I watch them all the day long. And then that's what I offer too with what I do with the equine therapy stuff I do. It's like this play. I agree with that. It's fun.
So important. And what do we say in our culture? No horseplay.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and don't have fun. Get in the pool, but don't have fun.
Oh, it's so boring to watch some of the more competition riders because they do anyway. That's their own path. Because I love it too. By the way, I just did a hunter pace on Sunday with my friend. It was super fun. Not that it was competitive, but it was they were actually timing. But I gotta actually go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was just gonna say, horses can enjoy those jobs.
They totally can. That's Marianne brought that up, Marianne Simons brought that up in the interview. There's no question. They love
certain horses can really. I remember being with Shasta up at a Jonathan Field clinic, and we were playing with the physio balls. We were sort of playing. We were kind of bashing them around, kind of little ball polo and different things. And then some barrels were set up, and he said, "Okay, hey." And I had a bunch of friends auditing, and here I am with Shasta, and we were going to do our own little version of barrel racing. And I thought, oh well, I have no experience with this, but hey. And let me tell you, Shasta had other ideas. She was a lead mare, and she was not about to let those other mares pass her.
Boy.
And next thing I knew, we were flying. And I don't know that she was a barrel racer in another life, but my friends were just like cheering wildly, like, go Connie. I'm like, hey, stay on,
There's actually
again,
that documentary, One with a Herd. I saw her in action, and she was. I could tell her she was. She was running with. They were following her lead. She was done. Like
no question about it.
I saw that in the video.
Straight to the top.
Yeah,
she went straight to the top. And here's an example of the kinds of things. For a dozen years after my son was in first grade, I had the first graders come out for a play day field trip. And so I would go into the classroom during the year, and we do horse spelling and horse math and stories and role playing about how to greet and all that jazz. And so by the time they came out at the end of the school year, we celebrated all the summer birthdays of kids that didn't have birthdays during the year, but we did a little dog and pony show. So it was my horses and doggies and some other guests and some minis and people that came for the day, and we ran time. And in my little we did a lot of interactive things, but I did a little presentation where I did played with my horses at Liberty, and we did some things over the obstacle course. And the grand finale was Shasta jumping over, and they were sort of in this little area cordoned off so we could be at Liberty. And I had a picnic table, and the finale was she was to jump the picnic table, land, and then that we would sort of take our little bows, and they would clap and cheer wildly. And as she came around and she knew, and she, when we were playing, if I was engaged with her and having fun playing, then it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was, quote, thinking I was training her,
right.
she'd be like,
yeah, right.
this has to have a purpose attached. If the kids are coming out, if I gave her an image of the kids, she'd be like, okay, I can do this. We can play.
Yep.
But I had to be fully engaged. And at the last moment, she changed. Well, she changed her trajectory. Instead of jumping the table in the center, she turned her gorgeous body and she flew at a diagonal over the table.
Wow.
And she stretched herself out to her full length and turned her head so deliberately at the children and said, am I not magnificent? Am I not spectacular?
Talk about
have you ever seen a horse fly?
Oh, jaw-dropping image.
She landed and then came over to me, sort of like, and my sidekick Connie, she came over to me and she bowed, something I did not teach her to do. She bowed and was clapping along with the children. I turned into my 7-year-old self fully in awe, in total awe. And that's what I love, is when you notice, like the other day when I saw your sound healing video, and having the horses go and protect from the perimeter and to stand guard and to do the things that they do so deliberately. And so often when I'm in a situation that I think I'm sort of setting up according to the sort of horseanality of this horse and this human, I have to just do my best to set it up for safety. They're big physical animals.
Yep.
And then step back. And like I said, let God and the animals and the natural setting do the rest.
It's such a
and the sound, the vibration and the frequencies.
It's such a relief but it does take some effort. I find that, but yeah, that what you're talking about. I did an outdoor sound healing with a group of 5 people, and Romeo and Hunter went to the far perimeter of the paddock we were in, and Hunter's paddock actually, and stood there facing away from us, protecting the perimeter. And then as soon as I was finished with the sound healing, they came right back to us. And they knew it. It was just, but so this is the intelligence I want to, because, obviously, just like humans, horses, there's different, different types of intelligence that each of us have. We all have our own, we all have our gifts. But so you and I were emailing about the beautiful Jim Key, right? This
beautiful Jim Key. I put this in a frame.
Nice. So
beautiful Jim Key. This is an image of the badge that children got when they went to see him.
1904 World's Fair. 1904 World's Fair, and this is a horse that could spell. We had the owner, not the owner, the person, his human, Dr. William Key, who worked with him since birth, found this intelligence, and he could spell words, he could spell names, and he could also do calculations. I think anything under 30, he could do small calculations. And so the long list, but Shasta had a huge intelligence as well. But what were you going to say about Jim Key?
That's a perfect segue because that's how I got completely fascinated with the level of intelligence that I was seeing and the deliberate nature. Not to say all horses don't have spectacular intelligence, just like people, but we are neurologically, we're on a continuum, and all of us have gifts and talents and being able to find and access that. But the story of beautiful Jim Key is that, and I could go on forever, but Dr. William Key was, again, a paradigm buster in terms of born a slave and was a self-taught veterinarian, and he had
mixed background too, white, I think a white.
Yes.
A white and a black parent, or an African American parent and a Caucasian. I don't know which one which. So
and he learned to read and write, but he was self-taught at everything, and he created a mineral liniment that was something that he sold, and so he acquired a mare that was spectacular, a sire and dam. So he was very excited to
and so
have this
here's where,
baby.
but here's where we get a little more overlap in our lives, because the dam was a Arabian who was owned by, I looked it up, the Sheikh Ahmad of Persia. And I'm half Persian. So here we go. Now we're talking about beautiful Jim Key. Please continue.
Again, I don't believe any of that is an accident.
Right.
In the conversations that we've had. So the horse that he was anticipating, when he arrived, he could barely walk. He could barely stand. His legs were malformed and he was very sickly and weak. And so Dr. Key, with some humor, named him after the town drunk Jim. So he became Jim Key because it was Dr. William Key. But he took him in the house and rubbed his legs down with this liniment and loved him and caressed him and told him he was wonderful and he was going to emerge as this amazing horse. And he did. And before Dr. William Key started interacting with him to develop all these amazing abilities that he had, he noticed Jim's intelligence, Jim's play drive, how he would open drawers on his own because he was in the house, and how he would put an apple in there and then take it out, and he would notice these behaviors. So when people asked him, by the time he emerged as this incredible horse with all this ability, he would be asked, Dr. Key, what are your training techniques? And he would smile and reply, love, love, and love.
Beautiful.
And again, you can hear from natural horsemanship, love, language, and leadership, and it's all important and it all has a role. But this was an Anam-Cara relationship. And then Dr. Key's main goal was to spread awareness, to open up racial relations and not get away from stereotypes and get away from any kind of divisiveness, and also to bring children in to see how intelligent and amazing that these animals are. To backtrack a little bit and back to the Council of Horses, coming from the horse's point of view, one of the greatest, most popular to this day literary books is Black Beauty. Mm-hmm. And that was written in Anna Sewell around the turn of the last century also, from the horse's point of view, and how the horse felt about the owner that cared for him and loved him and shared his friend Ginger, the mare, and how they loved to run together and they loved each other's company, because horses, of course, like they need each other, they need space, they need safety. These are basic mammalian needs, and they're very similar. They're different and they're the same. They're very similar and very different. But in that time, Anna Sewell's goal was to help us see from the horse's point of view. And I mention in my book, I love idiomatic expressions. I love words and I love origins, derivations. And there was a expression at that time called the rule of thumb. Now, if you put your thumb up next to mine, it's quite considerably bigger than mine as a man to a woman. But culturally at that time, a man with a carriage horse could flog and beat that horse socially, culturally acceptable, as long as it wasn't bigger than his thumb, the rule of thumb. He also could beat his wife.
So I mean, how would you beat a horse? Wait. So if it was
no, not with your thumb, but with something, the rule of thumb, something, the caliper of your thumb. So if you had a stick, doesn't mean that if in London a carriage horse that was so exhausted that he or she could not take another step was falling to the ground, it doesn't mean that there wouldn't be someone in the crowd to say, stop hurting and beating that horse. Have you no mercy? Have you no... but culturally, it was normalized and acceptable as long as it wasn't bigger than his thumb.
Oh, now I understand. So, that's so
now
sad and fascinating.
So Anna Sewell,
author of Black Beauty, author of Black Beauty,
was telling the world, no, you need to think about it from the horse's point of view. So that became the impetus for the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in England, which was the forerunner of the Humane Society in the United States. Similarly, Dr.
William Key
for Jim Key, created a society, and I can't recall, I don't have it right in front of me. I think it was the Band of Mercy or something, but the children all got a little card and they got a little button. I've seen beautiful Jim Key, and they got a little card. The card's little mantra was "Be kind to animals."
Wow.
And I grew up. My sister and I started a club called Be Kind to Animals, and it was again that whole energy of seeing other as valuable, and seeing other as intelligent. And we've talked before about Temple Grandin.
Oh yes.
And certainly the children that you work and play with are, neurally, there's a wide range of what is normal, and
if there is a normal,
if there is a normal,
right?
If there is a normal,
this is another construct that there's somebody made an idea that there's a normal, which is really not necessary.
That's exactly right. The ideal everything, exactly. And so we can be neurodivergent and neuro amazing and neuro this and neuro that. And we can find, I loved in one of your explanations online about your sound healing, where so many kids that are considered to be on the spectrum of autism, how they can be sound sensitive and also sound seeking.
Well,
and
sound,
I think
sound adverse and sound seeking, depending. It's like some kids will put their fingers in their ears because it's just too much. Other kids are like, more, I want to hear more.
That's right.
Searching for it.
Finding that, and like you say, eliminating the noise. When I talked earlier about George Washington Carver tuning in, is tuning into the frequencies of love, joy, acceptance, beauty, etc., and not getting the static of the system, and having the tuning forks or the sound bowls being able to help us access frequencies that are life affirming and get the noise out of the system and build up our internal electromagnetic battery. So we're not running around with all this excess noise. And let's look at our culture. It's just a noise and propaganda. And we have to be so mindful about what we're introducing. And so I think that this is very pertinent right now.
100%.
Exploring all of these things.
And it's some reason and Marianne Simons has noticed this. It's kind of really blossoming. You guys have been around and seen it. Now it seems like it's taking off for some reason. I don't know why, but back to the intelligence, and actually I wanted to tie in with that beautiful documentary, one with Herd with Liz Minton Ryan, and you're interviewed, and Shasta is on this beautiful documentary. You can find it on YouTube. I watched it. I think it was about 40 minutes long.
Something like that.
So what they were, can you just describe a little bit what was going on? Because, I have a little background now, but it's pretty remarkable. And so Liz is the only one I know that's really I don't know anybody who did this before her, but basically, like you described already, that 320 acres of land, her herd was never had, none of them are rescues. None of them were ever asked to do something by force, which, and none of them, average horse has been sold 5 or 6, like Shasta, average horse is sold 5 or 6 times in their lifetime. Massive trauma. When you break up a horse's friendships and stuff like that. Right. And then, but the other one is that, so that you had this paddock, and there was these tables, and people were lining these tables, and the horses were invited to come over and offer. And can you just describe what was going on? That's an intelligence I want to hear you describe. What's going on? What was
and I think Liz has evolved over time also, and she says in the documentary that the land itself is extremely healing, and it's a lot of people who come are, like I said earlier, are not necessarily horse people, but they're attracted to the whole energy if they've seen her books and some of her other documentaries. And initially she's just over time, again, set it up more where the horses have much more of a voice or a choice, and some are, and she does have a few rescues. She has, she, she, she has a rescue steer. Tesoro, the one I grew up with, has passed, but she has another one, because she told her neighbor, don't you ever, take the life of an orphan. And they drove up and said, be careful what you wish for, Liz, here.
Okay. All right. So she's
So
got
this
a mixture of her then.
2,500-pound steer,
Yeah.
with the herd. So, and she has a few rescues
Okay.
here and there that she couldn't help herself from. But the horse herd is all biologically related. So it's very unusual. And they have this freedom. So she has several, about 10-acre areas, that paddocks in different areas. So when she brings humans in, and now, the last time I was there, she set up her huge stable. Her husband, Kevin, is a brilliant eco-architect, and it's very European, where the house is very, they're off the grid. It's very earthy and beautiful. But the horses literally come up, and there's sort of little booths or corners, little places where you can just sit in their space or be outside and just allow the horses, and it's all open. It's open air. It's covered on top, but it's open air, and the horses move around. And you've seen this with various things with your sound healings, but with sometimes 2 or 3 horses will come and work together, and they
on the human
will
work together. What does that mean?
With the human.
With the human, yeah. They're standing next to the human, right? And
the last time I was there, I have a very strong relationship with Epona and her son Pashar, and I was having problems with my left ear, and I went over and sat with them and sat near them, and they came over. She took, like Shasta used to do, she took my entire ear in her mouth. Wow. And was breathing deeply into it, while Pashar was holding space and beaming down. It was just the most amazing thing. Jeez. And then I sent you a photo of Merlin, her little rescue.
Yep.
Liz came up to me and she said, for crying out loud, Merlin's in his office waiting for you. And Merlin has a special spot. He's sort of Dr. Merlin. He's this little old ancient rescue pony. And I came over to Merlin and sat down, and he proceeded to, I have never had, my hair looked like it had been in a mix master. Jeez. And he went down my spine. I'm like, hey, ease up. I'm kind of into soft touch. I'm not into this rolfing stuff you're doing. And he said, come on, no more sissy stuff. You need this. And I'm not kidding you. He gave me a session that I cannot even explain. And once again, it was so deliberate. Dang. If you had a video of that, you would just shake your head. Like you said, sometimes you walk away and go, did that just happen?
Right.
And Liz saying, and again, when I got there, this was a couple of years ago, but when I got there, I walked up and said, hey, Merlin, how's it going? He looked at me like, whatever. And I said, hey, I'm Connie. I'm Shasta's mom. And he was like, yeah, right. I can tell. I can see that. But he was totally indifferent to me until Liz told me he's waiting for you in his office. He's had his eye on you all morning. Can you get with it and go over and honor him by sitting down? It was two sessions, and both of them 2 days in a row, about 45 minutes.
Wow.
And I was like brand new. I don't exactly know how to categorize all of his modalities. 45
minutes, you two are just sitting together, or you're sitting and he's standing on your ear.
I'm sitting on a stool. That was Epona. That was in another space with Epona and Pashar, but this was Merlin, the little pony.
Yeah.
That just was completely indifferent to me when I was trying all my human, hey, Merlin, remember me? And here's another one. At the end, if you notice this, at the end, Shasta had been running with the herd for 10 days. which was a gift.
I was thinking it must have been hard for Shasta to leave. Like, she looks so.
Actually, it was beautiful.
Was it?
It
Okay.
was beautiful. All the horses left
Wow.
and left her alone with Epona.
Yeah.
And they were having a conversation. And then I thought, how am I going to ever get her out of here?
Right.
And we have a wonderful setting, but
Yeah.
I mean, she had made all these new friends.
Right.
And she looked at me and literally walked at liberty with me to my trailer and got in and said, let's go home.
Incredible.
Yeah,
So finish
amazing.
up the story with Epona. The pony.
That Epona was the one that was breathing into my ear.
Yeah.
And then she and Shasta had developed a relationship over time. But in the Spirit Lodge, the very last day of filming, we're passing around the talking stick and it's my turn. And I say something to the effect that, today can't even fully describe how amazing, the people, the timing, the synchronicity, whatever I'm saying. All of a sudden I hear this, and I hear someone say, Shasta. And it had been raining, pouring, and it hadn't been raining during this time. It had been pouring. And Liz has heard, except for Epona and Pashar, they're all big bay warm bloods. And they're all out of the same horses, but Pashar is a paint warm blood, and she's a kind of a dark Palomino, more of an amber warm blood. But my point is, Shasta, they have 320 acres, and I'm speaking, and Shasta has her nose up against the glass.
No kidding. I did catch that. I caught that in the documentary. Yeah.
By the time the camera woman turns around, she films her. Shasta looks again like, am I not magnificent? And she's all wet and gorgeous. And then she disappears into the woods. But it was literally that kind of synchronicity where it was almost comical. You know how kids up against the glass and do their steps, She takes her gigantic horse head but the timing, it was like back to what I said with my Charlie, he's almost 3, my grandson, and he loves slapstick. Shasta loves slapstick. She was refined, gracious, dignified.
God! Now you're making me think of Nigel. Nigel was one of my first guys. He would steal things from people. He would steal clothing. Exactly. He would picked up a small 5-foot trainer by the back of the shirt and lifted.
Exactly.
Just like look at exactly. They were so funny.
Shasta, one time in the heat of the day, I was trying to complete my Pirelli level 2 natural horsemanship. And so I had all the tasks copied online, and I was ticking them off. And Ritzy, my son's Arabian horse, was so patient and so calm. And Shasta kept coming out the round corral that was open, but Ritzy I was ticking off my tasks, and Shasta came over and just gave me a couple of really glaring looks like, come on, get over it, give him a break. Well, finally, I laid his tasks on the barrel while I asked him to do some other magnificent thing. And she came in the door, grabbed it was stapled together, a bunch of pages, took it off in her teeth and ran wildly with it flapping around in her teeth. And I said, Shasta, I need those. Oh, you're getting them wet. Soggy. And she looked at me like, get with it. And so finally I said, I get it. You're right, Ritzy. You've been unbelievable. Thank you so much. I gave him I apologize. This went on longer than you needed. Okay, Shasta. So she came back and she dropped the soggy papers on the barrel, and the two of them walked away.
Yeah. Incredible.
And again, you later you say to yourself, what else have I missed?
Right. Exactly.
With everyone all the time.
Right. It's like
with nature,
oh my God. I mean,
there's all of it.
There's so much to learn and unlearn at the same time. Connie, this is so incredible.
Absolutely.
We are definitely have to talk again. Maybe I'll take up your offer and come to your little cabin. That sounds beautiful.
I would love that. My husband would love to meet you. I've been talking all about you.
Oh, hey, come on. This is between you and Kim, and now I'm going to get to talk to Sandra. This is opening up my world like you'll never believe. So I'm so grateful. But I just have to, just one final question, because I asked this to Kim, and I feel like you guys have such a good pulse. But what is you think? What is the future for horses in our world of the human condition? What do you think's gonna? How is it gonna evolve next? You know, they've gotten so many different iterations now. What's next for us? And
What I believe, and I think I know, I got to quit thinking and know more, that there have always been people who got it. Whether it's Carol, I mentioned Stormy May. She has a new book out called, and that's going to be. I haven't read it yet in its entirety. I've read parts of it, but you know, horses and humans. It's about the evolution of what's happening because this is a age-old archetype of companionship, and we no longer are, thank God, going to war with horses, or they're not delivering our mail, and they're not. I mean, even though there's a renaissance of plowing fields, they're not certain per se.
it's pretty.
So
pretty
what
minimal.
are
Yeah.
horses?
Yeah.
So I was interesting that I was introduced to you through Kim, and then I listened to your lovely conversation with Marianne Simons, who's someone I've admired for a long time but never met personally. Is because of technology and because of access, more and more people are saying something like the rule of thumb and domination and normalization or public acceptance of beating a horse is unacceptable. And so I believe horses are God's supreme gift. There's not a hierarchy of horses or a hierarchy of species, because we can learn. Read J. Allen Boone's Kinship with All Life. There's an incredible story about a man having a relationship with a housefly he calls Freddie. It will change the way you perceive things.
Marianne told me to read that book too, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to.
It's an amazing short read.
Okay.
I've read it half a dozen times just to sort of refresh my memory of the pricelessness of all of life, all the time. But I really do believe, and I said this in because some of my words were part of the narration of one. I really do believe that horses are leading us back to the wilderness of our own hearts and our own souls, because every wild horse, some more than others, can be successfully domesticated and interact with us in ways that they can enjoy. They're treated with permission and consent and love, and at the same time, humans have completely lost our wildness unless we're allowed to play. You talk about in a stone house. I told you my nephew and his son just built a tree house, a tiny house up in between the big Doug firs.
Cool.
For our grandchildren, because they're only going to be little once, and we're going to be magical. And I'm the groovy unplugged grandma, and my husband. We're very silly. We're very slapstick. We're very noisy. And when I say noisy, I don't mean static. I mean when we're slapstick, we make big sounds, and we just think. I think of Charlie, and he thinks horses are the best because they toot and poop right in front of God and everyone. And he can count on Bullseye lifting his tail, tooting, pooping. It's just so sensational. What could be more wonderful when you're a boy, nearly 3?
Right.
But and that's why the ridiculous to the sublime with horses, I believe that they are leading us back to ourselves, which is God's grace, and the same divinity that created them created us, and we are all animated by the Holy Spirit, however people perceive that, and that horses are leading us not only to more groundedness and embodiment here on earth, but ascension. And it is possible to have both, and to understand and experience in both. We just need to be reminded. So I keep this George Washington Carver this particular quote on my desk to read and reread, so that each day I can be reminded what I endeavor to do, to be, and to live, and have that be my life experience, and have a a legacy, if I have one, as an auntie to the world or now grandma to the world, it would be to always remember the playfulness. And like I said, sometimes it gets slapstick, and that's okay. But to see the in ourselves as well as others, and to recognize these different intelligences, because we have so much to learn and so much we haven't. We as humans have hardly skimmed the surface of what's possible.
100%. Yep. That was, no, thank you. That was a lot of wisdom there. Thank you for sharing that. And I believe that too. I think you said it very articulate. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I really thank you. I just want to thank you for everything. This is incredible to have this conversation. And yeah, maybe we can try it again sometime if you feel like
I would love that, and I would love to stay in touch. And I want to thank you for the dogs were at my feet this morning when I found on I can't remember which site where it said, zero interest in this book. I mean, literally, it said zero, and it helped me literally laugh out loud to, back to self-acceptance and self-love, and just a giant dose of humility, and knowing that I'm choosing to be sort of off the radar.
Yeah. Which I'm totally jealous of, by the way, because I'm so freaking plugged in. But just so I can, not that you need it. I'll give your book 101 stars.
Oh, you're so great. That's so fun. I love that. Well, read it first. So that
I'm loving it. No, I've been reading. I haven't quite finished it, but I am loving it. And I love you have Kim's spirit
yes.
Horse in there.
The spirit sketches. Yes, the spirit sketches. Aren't those powerful?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The two of you, really. Yeah. So
yeah.
I'll have more questions, but I have some homework now, thanks to you. And I'll get back to you, and let's stay in touch. And
definitely.
Thank you, Connie.
Definitely.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thanks. Hey, Connie, before you go,
yes.
not that you're required to, but do you? Is it okay if I use the bio in your book? Is there anything else you'd like to add in your bio? It's it's an older bio.
You can, if once again, you can put everything, all of my information. I don't currently have a website. Yeah. You can give people my email if they want to access me. Okay. I'm amazed at readers from 10 plus years ago, how people find me.
It's crazy.
And connect with me. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I have had people from all over the world say, please write.
Yeah.
I really love your stories. Please continue to write. So we'll see if book, now it would be book 4, but we'll see if it ever materializes. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. But in the meantime, I have so many beautiful gifts to be a grandma, to care for my husband's mother, with my husband's mother, who's 94. Sometimes I have trouble keeping up with her.
It's incredible.
And my nieces and nephews, and and life. It's a beautiful time to be alive.
Yep.
It's an exciting time to be alive. I feel very hopeful for the future of all of us discovering the otherness and not believe the propaganda programming divisions,
100%.
because they're not real.
They're not real.
What's real is what you and I have, and we've just recently met.
Yeah.
So
right.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
And I feel like one day, get to the Pacific Northwest, when you roll up our driveway, my husband and I will be here, and the dog Bear will be here with his squeak toy.
Cool.
So I love that. I love that we do live in this world, and we live in this choice. And for those people who are so deeply wounded by so much in the culture, it is our blessing to reach out and to be loving, and to be playful, and to share. There's a biblical scripture, and I don't want to botch it either, but it's something to the effect that when you are richly blessed, and I don't mean materially, I mean with emotional, all the beautiful place where I live, much is expected, and it should be.
Mm-hmm.
So I told you off the call that sometimes I wrestle with God, and I say, I've had too much. It's hard to sleep at night knowing what I know, the assault on children, and so many that we're living with some darkness, and the darkness is being exposed. And it's hard for me sometimes because I've lived it for a very long time, and I've wrestled with God and said, I've been at this a long time, and I need a gentler, softer way. And God's Shasta is one of God's great messengers, perhaps a saint, for sure a sage, perhaps a saint now in her new incarnation. But she would tell me the same, is it's time for you to take a deep breath. And God tells me, I gave you a love for those children when you were one yourself, and I gave you a voice, and now I need you to use it more than ever. Perfect. So, and I want my grandsons to know that Grandma Connie was willing, when it was unpopular or difficult, to stand up for children always. So perfect. I join you in your work and play.
Okay.
And I'll be learning from you, because the sound healing is something that we both really literally resonate with.
Awesome.
So I have a lot to learn, and I got your book.
Oh yeah.
And I'm really eager. I'm diving into it. So
okay. All right. That's same.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have more reading to do, but thank you for all the other books you're sending as well. So we'll be in touch. We'll be in touch.
All right.
All right.
All right. God bless you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Connie. Take care. Bye.
Thanks again for listening to the Centaur podcast. These are the kind of interviews I just really love. People are just doing the work and not really, in the spotlight. If you know somebody like that who would be interested in being interviewed, please contact me. Really love that. Love to talk to more people like Connie. And if you're interested in learning more about my work, please check out my website, CamronAdibi.com. That's CamronAdibi.com. And please stay tuned for more exciting interviews. Thanks again.